And welcome back to Livingston Parish News Weekly Show, a podcast brought to you by the Livingston Parish News. This is from the cheap seats. It's where I sit down with this gentleman here and talk about what's going on in athletics here in Livingston Parish. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. And good morning, sir. How are you?
Doing well. This is Rob DeArmond, sports editor with the Livingston Parish News.
And plenty to talk about today. We're going to start with, I know we said that we thought we had wrapped up the fall sports last week. Turns out not quite true. Of course, there's always coaching changes.
Always some stuff going on.
But first and foremost, want to mention an honorable mention on the statewide football team from Denham Springs. Go ahead and tell us about it.
That would be Deshaun McBride, defensive back. If you guys remember, he was the all-parish defensive MVP. He was also the district MVP for their district. Finished with 9 interceptions on the year. I wound up talking with Coach Beard a little bit about it, and you know, like you said, it's you're playing 5A football, which is the highest classification, good competition, and to make that team is a really big honor for them. And then, you know, I kind of asked him, I was like, hey, man, you know, this has got to be a stepping stone for Deshaun, maybe for next year to look at some different goals and things like that. And, you know, maybe he said you look at it and he'll say, okay, it was an honorable mention guy, you know, had 9 interceptions, honorable mention, you know, kind of what else do I have to do to make the team. So maybe that'll help him out going into that senior season, set some goals a little bit higher maybe.
Sure. And so we'll be keeping an eye on his career as he
absolutely
returns.
He's just had just a great kind of breakout junior season. I think when we started out talking with Coach Beard and Deshaun had gotten a couple starts as a sophomore, and just one of those guys you put out, and each year or each week it seemed like he got progressively better and better. And you know, if you guys remember, he had the 2 pick sixes against Live Oak that kind of put him on the map, if you will, for the season. And ever since then, he's been kind of on this little meteoric rise, if you will, for the rest of the year.
Sure, played very well, even into the playoffs. So again, we'll be keeping an eye on him. But speaking of Live Oak, and we talked about coaching changes. We've already discussed their new head coach, but he has selected his offensive coordinator.
A name you guys might be familiar with, Mr. Randall Leggett, who's been the head coach at St. Thomas Aquinas, I think, since 2018. I guess the common denominator here is when Coach Hutch Gonzalez, was at St. Thomas. Coach Leggett was his assistant head coach. So they're, you know, he's kind of bringing him over, and kind of just, you know, when you look at Hutch, he's admitted an air raid guy. That's, you know, he was under Hal Mummy there at Southeastern, you know, when he was there. So he's bringing that part, and he's hoping, you know, he and Coach Leggett, just talking to him, he's a run guy. So the hope is that, you know, they can kind of get in the laboratory, put their heads together, and find that kind of offensive balance that you're looking for sometimes when you put it together. So it's just one of those things. And you know, like Coach Gonzalez said, anytime you've had a guy who is a head coach or has been a head coach and sat in the seat, maybe he's got some experiences that maybe Coach Gonzalez has not had, and maybe has some different ways of maybe handling situations that they may get into, and vice versa. They can bounce ideas off each other. So yeah, it's a really good hire. I know, you know, I live in Hammond, and I know that St. Thomas community is really, really respectful of what Coach Leggett was able to do with their program. And like he said, it's a challenge for him as well. It's 5A football. He said 5A football is 5A football, and I think that's part of the challenge of taking the job at Live Oak, just to kind of test himself maybe and see what he can do there as an offensive coordinator.
Sure. So that staff up there in Watson starting to take shape.
A lot of the guys are going to stay. I kind of had Coach Gonzalez run through, you know, okay, who's still there, and most of the guys who were on staff under Blaine Westmoreland are still there. Some changes. One name that's just been added, Jacoby Lee. I don't know if you guys remember, played at Live Oak, went to Nichols. He just finished up. He's going to be helping out on the staff there. Coach Gonzalez said the next big, I guess, big part of the staff is going to be selecting a defensive coordinator. So he said he'll be working on that over the next couple of weeks here.
Perfect. So let's now we've once again put fall sports behind us. Let's move to winter
for the time being.
Yeah, for the time being. I'm sure, you know, there'll be more. But let's talk about basketball. We've had some teams participate in some tournaments. I think we'll start with Walker. But then we had a couple other teams pick up some big wins too. So let's start with Walker, who went to the Wade Sims tournament, of course, named after the former LSU basketball player
Correct.
who met an untimely end. But trying to honor him with a good tournament, and it was a lot of big names, very good basketball.
Right, great tournament, big names. These teams get tested. For Walker, they finish as the runner-up. They wound up losing to Scotlandville in that championship game. Got off to kind of a slow start in that first quarter and kind of never recovered there. But the big win for them was they got one over Ponchatoula to get there, which was you're talking about some of the top teams, like you said, in the state or in this one tournament. So they're getting tested off the bat. You can't say off the bat because we're kind of deep into it now. So they'll be starting district here shortly. But that was the big win for Walker over Ponchatoula there.
So moving into some of the smaller schools. Well, actually, first let's talk about. You said there was kind of a heavyweight bout on the girls' side between Albany and Denham, and that turned into a real good game.
Yeah. You look down your schedule, kind of glance, and once you see that game, you kind of circle it and say, okay, we got to be there and we'll see what's going on there. And you've got Albany sitting there in Division II as a number one, and Denham in Division one is I think they came in as a 5. So you're looking at 2 top 10 teams in their divisions. It winds up Albany gets the win 65-43. They kind of go on a run there. The first quarter was kind of back and forth, and then the second quarter, Albany kind of does what they do, stays with that press, kind of creates some turnovers and some transition buckets, makes it work, and just kind of pulls away. It's like, like I told Coach Smith and talking to him, it's kind of, he's like, you look up and, you're there, and all of a sudden you're going into halftime, you're down double digits. And, I told him don't feel bad because Albany's done it to a lot of people. That's kind of just how they play. I think both coaches coming out, they got exactly what they needed out of it, except, for Denham, it's minus the win. Coach Smith was really happy with the way his team competed in there. He said if there's one thing they're going to really work on, it's the boxing out and rebound, especially second chance shots and things like that, because that was kind of where Albany won the game there. The other part was Albany's depth. Coach Smith said he went about 7 deep, and in turn, Albany, if you've seen them play, they go double digits deep, and it's every couple of minutes they're subbing people in just to keep them fresh. And both coaches said that played a part in what they were doing. So just a kind of a preview of maybe some postseason basketball, just the way things are going. That win moved Albany to 21-0 on the season, and that was Denham's second loss of the season. So like I said it last week, but everybody right now is seemingly playing really good basketball.
Yeah, and as they often do here in Livingston Parish,
correct.
We've got teams on both sides
Correct.
that typically go to the Marsh Madness, as they call it. And it definitely looks like the way things are shaping up. Again, for both sides, male and female, boys and girls, looks like we've got some teams going. Speaking of which, the French Settlement boys picked up a pretty big win over a much larger classification school. Tell us about that.
Right. French Settlement was hosting the French Settlement Classic last week, Thursday through Saturday. Big win for French Settlement on Thursday to open up that tournament. They went double overtime with St. Paul's, who's always a kind of a powerhouse school in their division and class. It's just one of those things where, if I remember correctly, St. Paul's hit about 10 3-pointers in that game, and French Settlement usually can go and use those long-range shots. They really didn't hit too many. It's just a matter of down the stretch just kind of pulling away, doing some things there. It was really late before they actually took a lead in the game, so they were kind of playing catch up from the get go. But it was just this back and forth game, and at this point in the season, those are the types of games you want to play to kind of get yourself ready for the playoffs. And I think that was the biggest thing for Coach Jake Bourgeois over there at French Settlement and his kids. And he said one of the guys, Talon Banta, was kind of like, hey man, if we hadn't played a game that hadn't put us on a map, this was it. So it's another big win for them to go ahead. So
any other basketball?
Yeah, French Settlement girls, if I remember correctly, got a win over Sanamo in that tournament, which is big for them. And then French Settlement, if I'm remembering correctly, the boys got a win over Episcopal too. So they'll go 2-0 with wins over 2 quality teams there.
So if you're ever looking to keep up with this, of course, follow Rob on Twitter, and of course, posting several basketball roundups as the week goes along. Of course, basketball and baseball, softball, very tough because you got 18 teams blowing and going.
Correct.
But district is coming up here pretty soon, I would imagine.
I believe, in talking to Coach DeRoos, I think the Albany girls will be starting on Friday at a meet. Kind of speaking of that too, I'm just finding out that we're taping this on Monday. Tuesday night's game, the girls' game between Holden and Albany, has been canceled. The boys' game will still be played. Actually, I'm getting a text right here. Yeah, so the boys will be playing. This is Coach DeRoos on the text. I don't want to call it breaking news, but I guess it is. And they said they're still working on a start time there to see what's going on with the boys' game. But looks like it's just going to be a boys' game between Holden and Albany there at Holden on Tuesday.
Gotcha. Well, thank you, sir. As always,
Sure.
As a reminder, remember to follow Rob on Twitter to keep up with this stuff as it happens. If you'll introduce yourself, sir.
Hey, this is Rob DeArmond, sports editor with the Livingston Parish News.
And my name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. This is From the Cheap Seats. It's where Rob and I talk about what's going on in Livingston Parish athletics. Please remember the news is on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. We are once a week in print on Thursdays at $7 a month. To get that in your mailbox, we're also online, www.livingstonparishnews.com. We appreciate you guys joining us, and we'll see you next time.